COVID-19, or coronavirus. 6 million people infected worldwide, with 400,000 passing away. That is tragic and difficult to think about, but I just have two questions for you. The first, if you were infected today, how would you react? And if another pandemic breaks out worldwide, are you healthy enough to survive? I'm Kurt Kampfer, and in this series, Surviving a Pandemic, we have 4 experts who are ready to help you improve your health and prepare you for the next global outbreak. We have lectures streaming on Facebook and YouTube with topics like how to build up your immune system, are you sleeping too much or too little, and is water the answer to our health problems? So hit the like button to get updates, and please take this link and share it with your friends and family. We want to help as many people as possible. And then lastly, we have a free gift for you where you can get extra content where we go deeper into these discussions. All you have to do is, again, check the description for the link, sign up and get access. But first, we're going to deal with our speaker that's starting things off, Dr. Evelyn, and she's got 10 years experience in pediatrics and is currently at the Red Cross Children's Hospital. Dr. Evelyn is going to cover a foundation in the immune system, and this is only part 1. Please don't miss out on the session. Stay locked in, enjoy it, and I will see you at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this series of Surviving a Pandemic. My name is Dr. Evelyn Ichamwenge, and I'm very privileged to be part of the panelists who are taking you through these talks. Today I will be discussing the immune system. It's going to form a background for the rest of the talks that shall come as we continue with this series. So this pandemic finds me in Cape Town. We've been here now for a year with my family. It's been an exceptional experience. I'm currently based at the Red Cross War Memorial Hospital, currently doing my subspecialization in allergy. And so as we begin, I'd like us to just ponder on what has been happening around us, and just to encourage you that no matter your situation, whether you've been affected or whether you've been infected or whatever other situation that you find yourself, that God has equipped us with all that pertains unto this life, and also that He hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. So George Orwell was once said to say, the object of waging a war is always to be in a better position in which to wage another war. So here we are faced with this pandemic. Indeed, people are full of anxiety and thinking what's going to happen tomorrow. We find ourselves in a position where we can't even plan for the next minute. But what we must remember is that pandemics have been faced in the past, and lessons have been learned in the past that we can employ in our current future state. And this actually also takes me back to the days of medical school, where I had to work very long hours in a large hospital back in Nairobi, Kenya, where I come from. There was lots of sick children, and often you'd find yourself going home with one infection or another. And I remember going through a period where I kept getting these infections one after the other, week after week, to the point my family was getting worried. At this stage, I thought, hey, but I do have an immune system. Why is it not working as it should be? So I took a deliberate effort to turn around my lifestyle, and I found myself eating healthier foods, more fruit and vegetables, and being more informed of what I'm putting into my body, more deliberate. I started to exercise more. I started to deliberately find time to rest. And as the period continued into my medical school life, I found that I was able to fight infections better. I was able to go through school without having to get offs because I'm sick. And my mom, I remember my mom's word, she kept saying, you must feed your immune system, you must build it and make it strong. And so today I'm here to talk to you about this system, our ultimate defense, even in this state of the pandemic that we're currently facing. So as an outline, I'm going to go through the origins of the immune system. We're going to look at the components of the immune system, functioning of the immune system, what influences our immune system, and what a dysfunctional immune system looks like, brief mention, and at the end we're going to do a summary. So when it comes to the origins, immune is actually a Latin word broken down into two parts. So there's the in, which means not, and munus, which means ready for service. So basically it's a term that was used to portray protection or exemption, especially from an obligation or the effects of something. It was quite a common term used in the 19th century, more so in the Roman Empire, where they used it to show those who had been bestowed immunity from taxation. And this was the chosen few. However, there was no special exemption from the scourge of virulent disease that plagued people around this time. And as things evolved in the medical field, then this term was co-opted to mean those who are immune from disease. So in the 19th century, in the 1880s, white blood cells, which we now know as one of our soldiers when it comes to fighting disease, was thought to spread disease in the body. But this was later debunked by Eli Metchnikoff, who realized that actually white blood cells are not the enemy, they're actually the soldiers that are helping us fight disease. So during this time, the innate immunity was identified as the first line of defense. Lots of research was ongoing, and researchers were also examining the ability of bodily fluids, then known as humors, to provide protection against disease. So in 1890, as they were trying to look into this bodily fluids, they discovered that we have antibodies. And this was discovered by Emil von Behring and Shibasaburo Kitasato. So these antibodies were termed acellular components of the blood that conferred immunity when transferred from one animal to another. So research continued, and they found that, actually this is what we call the humoral immunity, which is basically immunity that's arising from components found in our bodily fluids. So at this time they found there's antibodies, and there's also cytokines, which are chemicals that are released by our immune cells. And these chemicals travel through to communicate with other cells and actually have an effect on them. Then we have what you call complement, which is basically an arm of the immune system of this first line of defense. And they tend to be proteins that float around that help with fighting off disease in the body. What ensued was a great debate. So here they are, having discovered all these different aspects of the immune system, but they were wondering, so which one works best? Is it the innate immune system, which is the first line of defense, or is it the other components that are found in the blood, the antibodies, the complements that are the bigger fighter when it comes to disease? So in 1903, Almroth Wright and Stewart Douglas proved that actually these humoral responses aided the cellular immune responses, and that these two act synergistically to help in the fight of disease. So in 1965, there was what we call immune diversity that was discovered by Dreyer and Bennett, which basically means they started to understand better how the immune system works. They started to discover more and more participants in what we call the immune response, and that all these work synergistically to help us against disease. So this is just a diagrammatic representation of what the immune system looks like. It's basically split into two arms. So we have the response either being an innate immune response or an adaptive immune response. So for the innate immune response, this is the first line of defense. It indiscriminately attacks pathogens. So this is what can also be referred to as mucosal immunity, because this is where the areas that are exposed to the external things of this world, so your mucosa in your eye, in your mouth, the genitourinary system, the gastrointestinal tract, this is where the innate immunity really exemplifies its activity or action. And so some of the antibodies that are associated with this arm are your immunoglobulin A and immunoglobulin M. So immunoglobulin A tends to line all the mucosal surfaces of our body, whereas the immunoglobulin M is the main antibody that's released usually at the onset of infection. So some of the cells that I want to highlight that partake or participate in this innate immunity response are your neutrophils, which are known to rise to high levels during bacterial infections. We also have monocytes. We have eosinophils, which tend to be quite important when it comes to parasitic infection. We have basophils and the natural killer cells. So for the adaptive immune response arm, this follows an innate immune response. So basically this arm needs to be nudged by the natural or the innate immune response. It targets specific pathogens and it produces antigen-specific memory cells, which basically means after you have been exposed to a particular pathogen, be it a bacteria or a virus, and after an immunological response has been mounted, at the end of it, there are cells that remain to keep the memory of that particular pathogen that had attacked you. So that if you're attacked by the same pathogen again, then the response is much quicker, much faster, and it's cleared out from your body much quicker. So the two main cells that are involved in this arm of the immune system are the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocytes. And these cells are basically produced by our bone marrow, but each of these cells undergo a different pathway as they mature in our bodies, hence the different naming. Then these cells take part in humoral immunity, which is more towards antibody production, and then cell-mediated immunity, which is more towards the cells actually producing some chemicals to fight off those other cells in the body that have been infected by a virus or a pathogen. So I wanted to briefly mention something to do with pregnancy because it's quite interesting. In pregnancy, it poses a unique immunological challenge to the mother, who must become tolerant to a genetically foreign fetus, yet remain immunocompetent enough to fight infection. So this can actually be viewed as a dysfunctional immune system in that it has to quiet down its immune responses even as this foreign fetus is growing in the body. And it's just phenomenal how the immune system is able to distinguish and know, hey, we have a foreign fetus, yes, but it's not a foe, but rather a friend. And so we must quiet down a little and just allow for this baby to grow. And you'll find that mostly during pregnancy, mothers tend to be said to have a low immunity or tend to be more predisposed to infections. And that's because some of the guards that are usually up have been put down. So a bit more on the innate immune system. It is the first line of defense. It acts rather quickly within minutes to hours, trying to identify what has attacked us and what can be done, can we destroy. It recognizes a broad class of pathogens, so basically anything from viruses to parasites to bacteria. It has the inability to discriminate self from non-self because of the nature in which it works. It's quick in action and so doesn't have time to sort of look through to see what is this that we're dealing with. Anything that appears foreign is destroyed immediately. It tends to recognize the common patterns on the surface of pathogens. So each pathogen that we have, floating around or everywhere in our environment leaves a different kind of footprint, and on it has different kinds of patterns. So the innate immune system has mastered the art of trying or being able to pick up these different patterns and being able to deal with them. So it doesn't matter whether you had been attacked by virus A yesterday, even if you're attacked by virus A1 or A2, then the body is able to discriminate. It also involves the complement system, which I had earlier mentioned are particular proteins that are floating around in the body that help in the enhancement of the immune response that occurs after infection. So the adaptive immune system, as its name suggests, it's highly adaptable and it moves from this pathogen to the next, trying to create different antibody combinations. It's activated when the innate system gets overwhelmed. So usually the innate system will try and keep things down and keep things confined. But when that is not able to happen, then the adaptive immune system is called upon through release of certain chemicals like your cytokines, as I mentioned. It tends to be a bit more of a delayed response. It takes its time to understand, what is this attacker? What does it look like? What should we produce against it? What is the best machinery that we can use to kill this particular pathogen? So it recognizes specific protein peptides. So basically, when you're attacked by a bacteria and it's picked up by the cells on the surface, what we call the antigen-presenting cells, these antigen-presenting cells break down the pathogen and release certain tidbits of the pathogen so that it can present it to the immune system and show it what kind of disease or what kind of infection is happening. So then this adaptive immune system is able to pick up those little protein peptides that are expressed or exposed to it so that it can be able to mount a response. So it requires amplification. Once it has identified what particular pathogen it's dealing with, then it calls on for help. And you'll find that the immune system has a diversity of cells, and each one is called based on what kind of infection is happening. It's able to discriminate self from non-self, which basically means that in our body, we obviously have our own cells, and our immune system can perceive these cells, but they shouldn't be perceived as foreign and attacked. If this happens, that's what we call a dysregulation of the immune system, whereby you end up attacking your own self. And that is not supposed to happen. So the adaptive immune system is highly specialized in that it can tell that these are our cells versus these are foreign cells. This particular arm is quite important when it comes to graft rejection. So for the donors versus the recipient, we know that when you're giving someone a kidney, for instance, that you two must be quite similarly matched. And the particular area that is looked at is what we call the MHC, which is basically an area on our cells that need to be similar when it comes to transplantation. So this particular system is involved when it comes to graft rejection. If the adaptive immune system looks into the donor's organ and finds that it's quite mismatched, that it's able to quickly pick that up and fight against that organ, unfortunately, and you end up with a graft rejection. So that's what doctors try to do, to try as much as possible to create that similarity between the recipient's immune system's genes to the genes of the donor. It's also quite important when it comes to cancer killing. So our immune system works quite well in terms of patrolling to try and find out what's happening in the different organs in our body. So if it discovers that there's a certain area where there's an abnormal overproduction of cells or proliferation of cells, and it's able to quickly curtail that and sort of control that area and get rid of the cells that are not supposed to be there. So this arm also protects against reinfection through immunologic memory. So we know for diseases such as chickenpox, once you've already been infected by the chickenpox and you've been able to safely or you've been able to exhaustively clear out the infection, then over time you're unable to be reinfected again with the chickenpox. And this is a function of the memory that the immune system has. So it's quite clear with chickenpox that once infected, memory is formed, and if you're reinfected or if there's an attempt at reinfection, then your body is quickly able to remember that we have had this disease before, we already have the army against this disease, and we have a nice defense wall around us, we cannot be infected again. So this is a pictorial diagram just trying to depict the various arms. So to your left, you have the innate immunity, which I mentioned is non-specific and responds quite quickly. It involves quite a number of cells, as has been displayed. So we have mast cells, which will act quite well when exposed to infection. They're able to release certain chemicals that help towards battling the infection. And they are also quite key when it comes to allergic disease as well. We also have the dendritic cells. So these act as first-line defense. They're always on patrol everywhere, and they're the first ones to go tell on the pathogen. So what they do is that as soon as they pick up that there's something abnormal or a foreign particle that's entered the body, they sort of take it in and quickly travel to the lymph nodes where all these other cells of the immune system are standing by. And they're able to tell on the pathogen and are able to quickly start off an immune response in a bid to try and get rid of that infection. Then we also have what we call macrophages. Now macrophages are what we call phagocytes, in that they like to swallow up things that shouldn't be in the body. So they sort of just form a nice circle around what is attacking, and they're able to swallow it up, and then within themselves they release some chemicals that destroy that pathogen. We also have the natural killer cells and the complement proteins that I had mentioned. We have eosinophils, which are quite key when it comes to parasitic infections, as earlier mentioned. And we also have neutrophils, which tend to have a more predilection towards bacterial infection. So on the other side, on your right, is the adaptive immune system cells. So where we have your B cells, which derive their name from bone marrow, which is where they're produced. And these B cells produce antibodies, and there are millions of antibodies that our able has capability of producing against any pathogen that attacks us. Then we also have T cells, whose name is derived from their maturation that occurs in the thymus, so they're termed T cells. And the T cells can go into two different arms or two broad categories, where we have the CD4 T cells, CD4 representing a receptor on the T cell, and CD8 T cells, CD8 also representing a certain receptor on the T cells. So these receptors are the ones that are able to pick up on the pathogens that are being presented by the antigen presenting cells of the innate immune system. So once the innate immune system cells have picked up the pathogen, broken it down, they present it on their surface, and then while on the surface, these T cells are able to link towards those proteins that have been produced, and as such the cascade continues in terms of production of antibodies in the body. So once the T cells at the cascade, they call upon the B cells, and the B cells are looped in, and then the B cells are able to specifically produce antibodies and attack the pathogen. So they all work synergistically together. No arm is more, better or stronger than the other. So the idea of self-tolerance is quite an interesting one. So basically what happens is a failure to respond to specific autoantigens. It is essential for the prevention of destructive autoimmunity. So your body must have this ability to distinguish self from non-self. And if this does not happen, then you end up in a state of autoimmunity where you're attacking yourself. Good examples are diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, or what we call lupus, among other diseases. And this is attained through a number of processes. So initially, the autoreactive cells are purged in the thymus during the process of negative selection. And this tends to be quite a critical stage, especially in infancy. And you'll find that little children tend to have quite a large thymus where all these things are happening. All the maturation of your T cells are happening. The T cells, which are identifying self and attacking self, are destroyed because they're not supposed to be released into the bloodstream to permeate the rest of the body. If this happens, then you end up with autoimmunity. Now, this self-tolerance is dependent upon the expression of self-antigens within the thymus. So unfortunately, some of these autoreactive cells may leak into the system, but also peripherally, your body is able to pick them up and destroy them. So these are some of the components of the immune system. We have the tonsils, which basically form a ring. If you're able to open your mouth and you see those large tonsils on the sides of the throat, there's more towards the back that cannot be visibly seen when you open your mouth, and these rings continue downwards. So some of the lymph nodes are what we feel on our necks. Sometimes if someone is unwell, you'll feel something swollen around your neck area, either anteriorly on the front of your neck or at the back of your neck. So all these are lymph nodes that have been positioned, and the lymph nodes run from your head all the way to the toe in various areas. Most concentrations are around the neck, in the axillary area or in the armpit area, and also around the groin area. Then we also have the spleen, which is an organ on the left of our bodies, just beneath the stomach area. And this spleen acts as a very good filter for the blood. So as the cells permeate through the blood, then the spleen is able to identify any blood cells that are not within regulation or are not within the stated requirements of the immune system, and it destroys them. Then we also have the liver, which plays a key role when it comes to the production of antibodies. You'll find that the liver has a lot to do with protein synthesis, and the antibodies require a lot of protein in terms of their production. So if your liver is not functioning well, then unfortunately your immune system will be at a disadvantage and may not function to its optimum. We also have what we call the Peyer's patches, which is basically a system of lymph nodes in the gastrointestinal tract. They tend to be quite a large patch distributed all over the intestine. We know that the oral cavity is the entry point from a very tender age, so the gastrointestinal system is exposed to a variety of pathogens quite early. So these Peyer's patches works very well in terms of identifying these foreign particles or foreign pathogens and is able to eliminate them quite quickly. We also have the bone marrow. Bone marrow is quite key because this is where the immune cells are produced, especially of the adaptive immune response arm. Those are your B cells and T cells. So some remain in the bone marrow while others travel to the thymus, which is what I term the T cells. So the bone marrow is quite an important component. And you find that if you have any disruption when it comes to the synthesis of these immune cells, for instance, in the case of a leukemia where you have abnormal production of white blood cells in the body, then the other immune cells may not be produced as well as they should be, and as a result, that particular patient may become susceptible to infection because the immune system is not working at its best, at its optimum. Then we have the lymphatic vessels. So these vessels are what drain the lymph, and the lymph is basically the bodily fluid along which all these immune cells are permeating through and traveling to be able to water their way through all parts of the body. So when it comes to the influences on the immune system, I'm sure we all have an idea as to what may influence our immune system. And so as a beginning, I'll talk about the human microbiome. So this has been something quite phenomenal in the medical field in the last couple of years. I would say maybe in the last 7 years or so, whereby it's been identified that we have lots of microorganisms that are lying or lining our body and forming an ecosystem on our body. And so this accumulation or this aggregation of these microorganisms onto our bodies is what we call the human microbiome. They consist of different things. You have the archaea, bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, and these can be found on different parts such as your skin, which we know is the largest organ in the body, the oral mucosa all the way down into your gastrointestinal tract. They line the urogenital tract, they line the digestive system, and so all these aggregate of microorganisms are living peaceably with us. Now, what's interesting is that they found that for every one human cell, you have 10 microbiomes or microbial cells, which means that these microbiome cells are way more than we have human cells. And so they are found to actually have a form of influence, actually quite a great influence on our body and our bodily functions, and more so how our immune system works. So this human microbiome is actually acquired right at the beginning of birth. So for instance, when the baby is born through the normal route, as they come out from the mom, then they're coated with the mother's microbiome. And all this works to start to influence different aspects of our body, and mainly the immune system. So this microbiome will then be found on the baby's skin. It will find its way into the baby's mouth and into the gut, and in the gut be able to influence how the immune system works, how the digestion works. And you'll find that researchers have found that if you feed this microbiome the right thing, then it will start to influence your body in a right way, because they're quite highly influential. So it's just something to note that it starts quite early, and you can feed this human microbiome the right foods, which basically means lots of fruit and vegetables. And that is why when sometimes we take antibiotics, then we find that the body sort of starts to behave in an abnormal way. Our digestive system is just not right because there's a bit of dysregulation when it comes to the microbiome. So that's something important to note. So diet, this cannot be overemphasized. We've heard about diet now, we've heard about it before, we've heard about lessons learned even in previous epidemics, in previous pandemics, and we continue to emphasize the importance of diet. So this is some of the key sort of vitamins or micronutrients that have been found to help when it comes to fighting, especially in the wake of COVID-19. So we have zinc, which is found plentifully in things like lean meat, seafood, milk, whole grains, beans, seeds, and nuts. This helps to regulate how the cells of the immune system actually work. We also have vitamin C. We know that everyone talks about, when you're having a cold, or even in this kind of weather, as we're experiencing winter now here in Cape Town, that lots of people are going to the stores to buy their vitamin C tablets. You'll find that most shelves in the pharmacies have actually run out of vitamin C. Everyone is running to get them a pack. And so these are found richly in things like broccoli and cantaloupe. We have oranges, strawberries, tomatoes. And what these cells do is that, rather, what this vitamin C does to cells is that it helps the cells to deal with the oxidative stress that happens when it comes to infection, or the oxidative stress that emanates from an inflammatory process during infection. So it helps those products of infection to be dealt with by the body quite well. Then iron, found richly in your green leafy vegetables, white beans. This aids in the non-specific arm of the immune system, which is basically the innate immune system. And we have vitamin E, found richly in nuts and seeds and wheat germ, green leafy vegetables, avocado. This helps protect cells, again, from the oxidative stress that occurs as a result of an infection. Then we also have the vitamin A, found in all the yellow, red, orange-looking fruits and vegetables. So that's your sweet potato, carrots, red bell pepper, spinach, etc. And it helps to regulate your immune responses. So this is quite important. And you find that even for the younger children in their first 2 years, they have to be given their vitamin A because they're not able to get enough of it through the diet. And so we have to sort of add it on to their diet through vitamin A drops, which further helps to regulate the immune system even as they grow. Then we have the vitamin B6, which is found richly in green vegetables, chickpeas, and cold water fish such as your salmon. And this supports more efficient reactions to disease by the immune system and helps different parts of our immune system. So when it comes to nutrition and the human immune system, this will be dealt further or in more depth at a later stage during this series. Then, of course, rest. We all know that we need to rest, but whether we take that rest is another question altogether. So yes, rest is quite highly influential when it comes to the immune system, and we must actually just take time to rest. So be it a siesta in the afternoon or the usual rest, which means sleeping at least 7 to 8 hours a day. This cannot be overemphasized. Your cells need to replenish themselves. They need to re-regulate themselves. They need to patrol and find out what's going on in different parts of your body. If you notice, sometimes at night is when people tend to by the time you wake up in the morning, then you're aware of a certain illness or you're aware of a certain pain in a particular area because your body has been able to patrol all night long and can actually bring to your attention the areas that require you to look into. So rest cannot be overemphasized either. So how about exercise? We all know about exercise. Billions of lymphocytes are mobilized in response to a single bout of exercise, particularly if the exercise is dynamic and taxes your cardiorespiratory system. So examples are things like running, cycling, or rowing. Scientific evidence from other viral infections in the past, it indicates that those who are physically active will have less severe symptoms, they'll have shorter recovery times, and may be less likely to infect others that they come into contact with. So even as we grapple with the whole idea of COVID-19, let us take time, find time to do exercise and to release all these free cells, these millions and millions of immune cells that we have been equipped with to be able to help patrol and to fight off any lurking pathogens round by the corner. So the physical activity guidelines for Americans recommends 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity cardiorespiratory physical activity. So this basically means about 30 minutes of exercise every day for 5 days to achieve your 150 minutes and double the amount to achieve 300 minutes. And that you need 2 sessions per week of muscle strength training as well. So how about sunshine? This God-given, beautiful, natural ultraviolet light that you get from sunshine. So the UV light could at least inactivate the viruses on surfaces. So sometimes people have been advised that even if you're wearing, say, a mask that can be repeated or can be reused again, it would be important to put it out in the sun, because the sun will help to inactivate the viruses or any other pathogen that are on the mask. It kills airborne virus particles. And then the vitamin D, which is an essential vitamin that is produced upon the sun striking our skin, it's quite essential in the functioning of the immune system. So if you live in countries whereby you're not able to have sunshine for the amount of time that has been advocated for, then vitamin D pills or vitamin D supplements have been employed in such a situation, just to help boost up your vitamin D, because it's quite essential. Low levels of vitamin D can impair the development of macrophages, which, remember I said, are part of the cells that work in the innate immune arm of our body, the first line of defense. So if your cells are not functioning as they should be, then your immune system is not in a place to protect you as well as it should. Then comes the issue of vaccines. So I'm just mentioning vaccines to help us understand what vaccines really are, because their key target is the immune system. So these are basically particles that are derived from the pathogens that are known to cause illness in man. So over the years, there's been lots of research that has been put into when it comes to some of the top killer diseases. So for instance, things like pneumonia or meningitis or diarrheal illnesses. So things like your rotavirus vaccine. So all these vaccines are basically to help prime your immune system and be able to attack at the event of exposure to these organisms. So there are different types of vaccines, and this is just a list to just summarize what they are. So we have live attenuated vaccines such as measles, which means that a particular part of the measles is actually taken up and made weakened, so that when it's exposed into your immune system, it doesn't actually cause the disease, but it's enough to boost your immune cells to the recognition of measles in the body, and as such be able to prepare for any measles attack later in life. We have inactivated vaccines, which are basically killed parts of the organism that's introduced into the body just to evoke an immune response, create some memory, and be able to attack it at a later stage. And we have conjugate vaccines, which are basically attached to other non-pathogenic materials that are known to sort of kickstart the immune system. So once they're attached to those non-pathogenic materials, your immune system is kicked up and it's able to attack this infection at a later stage. An example is the meningococcal. Then we have toxoid vaccines. So basically, some pathogens are known to release certain chemicals or toxins in our body. So these toxins are then picked up, processed in a way that when introduced into the body are not harmful, and as such prime the immune system to recognize them, produce memory against them, and protect you for a later date. Then we have others that are currently ongoing clinical trials, where we have DNA vaccines, which basically means just taking a part of the DNA material of these particular pathogens, introducing it into the body, and being able to evoke that immune response. And the recombinant vector vaccines, similar to the DNA vaccines, but this DNA material is attached to either a virus or a fungi introduced into the body, and then they try to prime up your immune system so that it can fight off at a later stage. So how about a dysfunctional immune system? So basically this means that either the cells of your immune system are not working as they should be, in that there could be a mutation that may have occurred either through environmental influences such as smoking, or other mutations that may occur along the genetic pool, and you have dysfunctional cells, or the signaling between the cells is not working well. And so, yes, an attacker has come, yes, an initial immune response has been started off, but there's lack of communication, or there's a breakdown, in which case then your immune system is not working well, or part of your influences of the immune system is not working well. So for example, the human microbiome. So if you have a dysbiosis or a dysregulation of this human microbiome, then it negatively impacts on your immune system, and it doesn't work as it should be. And so what happens when this occurs is that you end up with things such as allergic disorders, commonly things like asthma and eczema, allergic rhinitis. It just basically means that the body is picking up things in the environment that would otherwise not be picked up by people who are not predisposed to this. So they pick them up and they abnormally see them as a foe and they start to attack them. And so you end up with all these allergic disorders. Then you have autoimmune diseases, as I had mentioned earlier, where your body is attacking self, transplant rejection, tumors, primary immunodeficiencies. So you're actually from the get-go born with a dysregulated immune system, and as a result you could end up with chronic infections. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a successful pregnancy can actually be seen or deemed to be a dysfunctional immune system because your immune system is quieted down. And so when it comes to COVID-19 and the immune system, lots of research is currently ongoing. Lots of papers are being churned out day in, day out. So I'm just going to highlight this particular paper that looked at the powerful immune system against COVID-19, and it's termed a hypothesis. So basically it talks about the peripheral dendritic cells. These are the cells I spoke about at the beginning, which patrol and are the first line of defense. So these are the cells that will pick up the COVID-19 and send out an alarm to say, hey, we have an attacker. So what the COVID-19 does, it actually interferes with the rapid rise of a particular chemical called interferon 1, which is basically the initial alarm, the one that sends out signals to the rest of the immune system to say, hey, there is something here attacking us. The mechanisms that this happen, how the mechanism upon which this happens is unknown. This impairment of the interferon 1 signaling results in the impairment of immune cell transformation to the antiviral state. So basically your body is supposed to take on the information and sort of set up a guard and go into an antiviral state, and the COVID-19 is found to interfere with this. It also goes ahead to cause persistent, profound inflammatory responses leading to immune exhaustion. So basically it puts up little fires here, there, everywhere that have nothing to do with itself, just to try and confuse the immune system and to lead it to a point of exhaustion. And it's been found that this energy that powers cells, what we call the ATP, is depleted. So if it can be repleted or if it can be regenerated, then you can be able to prevent what we call the cytokine storm, which is basically the immune system going haywire, producing all these cytokines, chemicals, and trying to fight off things that it's not even sure what they are. So if you can let your cells get the energy they need and sort of just to reprogram themselves, then you can be able to improve the counteraction of the COVID-19 and the immune system and its destruction. It's also been found that consuming foods with a low specific dynamic action can potentially boost the immune system through improving your cellular ATP. So these low specific dynamic action foods are basically foods that don't result in too much energy expenditure when it comes to their digestion. So such low as specific dynamic action foods include your fruit and your vegetables. So some of the food groups that are found to sort of use a lot of energy when it comes to the metabolism and breakdown is protein. So if you eat too much protein, or if you eat foods that are highly loaded with carbohydrates or high carbohydrate load of food. So in summary, the immune system is indeed your ultimate defense. It is free and ready to go. Be kind to your immune system. Feel free, feed it the right things, and feel free to get some rest. Rev it up, do some exercise, release those lymphocytes into your body and let them help you. Enjoy a little sunshine and engage in stress reducing strategies. So I don't know for you, but for me, I find prayer and family time. I have a little girl who keeps me quite busy and on my toes. That helps to just reduce the stress and the anxiety that seems to be surrounding us at this time. And of course, last but not least, let's trust God. This too shall pass. There have been previous pandemics. We do not know what the future holds, but what we know is that the best way to be prepared for a war is to learn from the past war that we have experienced and create avenues to wage the war that may lurk around the corner. And with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a great virtual audience. And I hope that the talks that follow after this will continue to edify you and continue to give you all the knowledge and information you need to survive these times that we are finding ourselves in. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that session with Dr. Evelyn. Thank you, Dr. Evelyn, for putting that together. That was insightful. Next up is Dr. Bruce Webb, and that is at 5 o'clock. Do not miss out. Dr. Bruce Webb will be looking at ways to boost your immune system. So please tune in for that. And also don't forget to like the page and the video, and also share it with your friends and family. And if you check the description for the link that allows us to get you that free gift, extra content that will help you in your journey to becoming healthier. I will see you guys later. Don't forget 5 o'clock, and I'll chat to you soon.